What do you think has been the most shocking realization to you through this whole thing?
That video was just so angry. That shocked me.
Creepshow Art.
Creepshow Art.
Shannon, Creepshow Art.
Creepshow Art, aka Shannon.
Stalking and harassing others online for over a decade.
Emily Artful posted a video.
Emily Artful came out with her own allegations against Creepshow Art.
How has life been since coming out with this publicly?
The first video was really hard. It made me throw up.
Creepshow Art, in response to the allegations.
The 2.5 hour long video.
She's focusing less on responding to Emily. She's focusing on going for Emily's throat.
I know people are angry at her, and I'm angry at her.
Creepshow Art suffered, as far as I understand it, the greatest percentage lost of subscribers of any cancellation ever. Did you know that?
With everything that you've been through, all of the allegations, do you see forgiveness at any point? Oh, hi there. Hello, hi. It's my face again. Swoop! 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 So as y'all know, I have been doing a 3-part series on the Emily Artful Creepshow Art situation that's been unfolding over the last several months, kind of coming to a head with Creepshow's New Year's Eve response video and Emily's response that was just posted. Now this doc is part 3 of the series, where I am going to be sitting down one-on-one with Emily Artful for an interview about everything that has happened. I had a ton of heavy-ass questions, and many of her answers shocked me, honestly, and I think you will find this fascinating. If you aren't familiar with this story, I highly recommend that you watch part 1 and 2 of this series, as well as watching Emily's videos and Creepshow Art's response video to get a better understanding of like all of the pieces at play, because honey, whoo bitch, there's a lot, okay? Now I do want to make this clear, everything in this series and the interview are just allegations. Like, I cannot and will not claim the information here as facts, and if it sounds like I'm stating an allegation as a fact, I'm not, okay? Just want to make that clear, allegedly. I will be addressing sensitive topics like rape and sexual assault, which I'll abbreviate as R-word and SA, as well as addiction and stalking. This is serious shit, so there will be serious moments, but child, listen, honey, okay, I will try and ease the tension occasionally, because y'all know we like to take things to Petty University a few times, okay? Okay, she got the uniform, Petty University, and y'all know Petty is my coping mechanism, okay? Professor Petty, stay ready. So let's do it, bitch. Real quick, we have an incredible sponsor, Fetch Rewards, who I am so stoked to partner with today, so let's jump into that and then strap in, limber up, bitch, whatever you gotta do, because we're gonna dig right into it. So Fetch Rewards is a super easy to use free app where you earn free rewards on literally anything you buy. It is amazing. All you do is scan any receipt or e-receipt that you have, literally any receipt, and you'll earn points no matter where you shop or what you buy. You then redeem those points for hundreds of rewards, including Amazon and Visa gift cards, Starbucks, your favorite restaurant. There are so many to choose from. And did I mention Fetch Rewards is completely free? So you literally just take a receipt, like I just bought groceries earlier today, and you tap to scan and take a photo of your receipt, and then it instantly gives you points for your receipt. I got a huge 1,000 points instantly just for my groceries. Like, I was surprised how many points I got. And you don't have to worry about where the receipt is from or what's on it. Just scan it, get points. Done and done, okay? And even better, if you use my link to download, you'll automatically get 3,000 bonus points just for downloading the free app. You are 3,000 points closer to an Amazon gift card. And also, they don't have to be printed receipts. Like, this works for your e-receipts as well. To me, this is totally a no-brainer. Like, I'm buying this stuff anyways. It only takes a few seconds to scan. So check out my link in the description to download Fetch Rewards for free and use code SWOOP, which should apply automatically, to get an instant 3,000 points when you scan your first receipt. You're going to absolutely love this app, I promise.
I feel like all that Shannon's video proves is that this woman has stalked me incessantly for years.
What I want to do here is have an open conversation with Emily and have her expand upon details of her story she may not have shared to try to get a clearer picture of what has happened according to Emily. And beyond that, like, I want to take this conversation even further and talk about some of the most challenging aspects of this situation and the areas that most other commentary around this hasn't really dug into. And I want to see if through all of this there's a solution to be found, or perhaps forgiveness, which I will ask Emily directly. So, to start things off, given how sensitive most of this is, I first wanted to make sure that Emily knew she had an out if anything was too triggering. And then we jump straight in.
Hello.
Hi. You look amazing, by the way.
Thank you. I was going to say the same thing about you.
Okay, so I do want to thank you for sitting down and talking with me. If there's anything that is triggering or feels too sensitive or something that you're not comfortable talking about, please just let me know. I want you to be comfortable and know that you have, you don't have to feel obligated.
Yeah, no, of course.
So I just first want to ask, like, how are you doing? How are you feeling?
A lot better than I thought I probably should be feeling, I guess. I've kind of prepared for this day for years because I knew this information eventually was going to be leaked, and I was taunted with this for years. So I kind of always mentally and emotionally prepared myself. I'd done work in therapy talking about if, all this ever came forward. And so I feel like if this were more out of nowhere, I think I would be in a much darker place, but I feel like so far I'm handling it pretty well. I think, yeah, better than I think I probably should be.
Well, and I don't even know that there is a should be. I mean, you feel how you feel, right? Yeah. And it's valid in its moment. How has life been since coming out with this publicly?
The first video was really hard. I had to really lean upon my family and my husband to kind of take over. I had this discussion with my husband that if I came forward, our lives could never be the same. Like we could lose everything. After the first video came out, the first 5 days were very hard. It was a desperate smear campaign to get anyone on her side that she could, even if that meant including embarrassing and wholly irrelevant information.
Throughout all of this, I wondered what was the catalyst that set everything in motion. Before you put out the very first video, what was the tipping point? Was there something that kind of pushed you over that edge, as it were?
Yes, absolutely. Initially, when the lolcow leaks came out, I didn't know about them until I think a few days later. She had felt untouchable until that moment.
Emily is referring to the now infamous lolcow leaks. I'm sure we're all familiar with it, which we will get into a little bit later.
Once I started to put the pieces together, I was hesitant to block her because if she ever noticed that, was worried that would then set her off, and then I'd get an exposed video, whatever. And then when I saw that her explanation for everything was Amy, and I read through her community post, too many pieces of the story about Amy lined up with what she had done to me.
Now, Emily mentioned that Shannon felt untouchable, but after the lolcow leaks, Emily was kind of like a whistleblower of sorts, calling attention to actual harmful, sometimes terrifying behavior that affected Emily's entire life. And listen, y'all know what I always say in a swoop doc, okay? Say it with me. It's not drama, it's dangerous. And stalking, harassment, assault are all prime examples of that.
So I believed for a moment, I don't believe this now, that she was going to try to flip it and pin that on me. Yeah, that was why I was like, nope, this isn't gonna happen.
By coming forward, again, if you think of this as kind of like a chess game, Emily moved to the offense rather than waiting to have to defend herself from what she perceived was the impending threat.
I don't think I initially saw it as I'm taking my power back. I was more like, you don't get to do this. This is ridiculous. I was mad, afraid, because she was, again, untouchable, powerful, had powerful friends. I didn't know what she was going to try to do.
Is there anything indicating to you, or do you feel like Shannon might have known that it was coming?
Yeah, I think part of her did. When you do enough in the dark, You have to start thinking about what happens when it all comes to the light.
It's a great statement right there. Hold on. Wait. Did Emily just take us to Petty University? Somewhere, somehow, Emily got the whole grain, gluten-free audacity to say something like all eloquent and deep like that, and do it with the level of casual unbotheredness. Let me translate real quick, okay? I'm about to become Emily's petty translator.
When you do enough in the dark, you have to start thinking about what happens when it all comes to the light.
Translation: a bitch done got caught, okay? Come on, somebody.
I don't know what you came to do, but I came to pray.
Okay, class dismissed.
What's really upsetting is that Shannon just continues again and again to weaponize my mental health against me.
We now move into the specifics of Creepshow Art's video, starting with the very beginning, which literally starts off with, how do I say this? A f***ing lie, allegedly.
If you are seeing this video, it means one of two things has happened. Either one, my lawyers negotiated with Emily's lawyers and we reached a private settlement which resulted in some form of retraction, or two, I took Emily to court for defamation and came out the other side.
Grab your grad caps, cause y'all know Professor Petty, stay ready, okay? I don't know what in the actual whole grain, lactose-free, Michael B. Jordan on a slice of sourdough bread kind of gall someone has to have to start their entire 2.5 hour diatribe with a very provable lie. Miss Liza Minnelli has entered the chat, and that bitch don't get out of bed for less than $100,000, okay? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true. No, I would not. No.
Now, Emily tweeted in response about this the day Shannon's video came out and gave me some more details in the interview. Has there been any legal action taken?
Not officially. At the, I want to say the beginning or middle of December, I received a PDF from her attorney. Their overall declaration was, if you do not remove these 3 videos, as well as every Twitter post you've ever made about Shannon in any capacity, we will sue you for defamation. And you have this deadline to respond. And I believe it was December 5th was the deadline. I consulted with, it's actually a family friend who is my attorney. He's not officially representing me. And he's like, you're both public figures. Defamation is going to be incredibly hard to prove.
Right.
Basically, we can just tell them to go kick rocks. Like, let's just do that.
And
Okay, we could just tell them to kick rocks. Bitch, if I had some pearls, I would clutch them right now.
I'm done. Yeah.
Can I get the number to your attorney, Emily? I need an attorney's like, well, just tell him to kick rocks, bitch, okay? Unbothered.
And I said, look, I am perfectly willing to never say her name again, never mention her brand again. I just want to move on with my life. You know, he sent that to her lawyer, and then they basically said, that's not good enough. We don't want to go to court either, but that's not good enough. You know, fine. Then I wouldn't even bother with a response at that point.
So Creepshow's attorney essentially sent Emily a cease and desist letter. And I just want to clarify, because I don't think that it's common knowledge. A cease and desist letter is not actually a legal document. It's nothing more than an unenforceable demand letter that's often sent by an attorney on someone else's behalf. And it would appear that this cease and desist came with a non-legal gag order demand, basically insisting that Emily not only scrub every utterance she's ever made of Creepshow, but to never publicly say why.
So I was essentially to remove every utterance, every video without saying a thing, explaining why I did any of it. Obviously that would have put me in a very unfavorable position. I think a lot of people would then speculate, well then what is Emily rescinding her allegation? And so that's why I couldn't do any of that. I simply refused.
So Shannon, if you want to sue me, then sue me. Drag this drama on. Refuse to move on with your life.
I think most of us have heard at one time or another that defamation is difficult to prove, but most people don't know why. So let's start with a quick definition. Defamation is a statement that injures a third party's reputation. The tort of defamation includes both libel, which is written statements, and slander, spoken statements. In California, a plaintiff must prove 5 elements to establish a defamation claim. An intentional publication of a statement of fact that is false, that is unprivileged, that has a natural tendency to injure or which causes special damage, and the defendant's fault in publishing the statement amounted to at least negligence. Shannon would have to be able to prove that Emily was intentionally lying, and that Emily does not, in fact, believe that Shannon was stalking or harassing her, and that Emily also made her videos knowing for a fact that Shannon was not her stalker, which of course would be like literally impossible for Shannon to prove, because that's just not the case here.
My stalker is Shannon, better known as Creepshow Art.
The trickiest part for libel lies in the second portion, proving that the defamatory statement was intended with actual malice. A victim telling their story does not have malicious intent, it's merely telling their truth.
Within Shannon's video, she says, you know, every lawyer I've ever talked to says I absolutely have a case. That's just not true. I've spoken to my family friend and also another lawyer and a friend, and they're like, no, you're both public figures. It would be incredibly difficult to prove defamation, and all it would do is waste both of your time and money.
One would also have to take into account that Emily primed her entire video by saying her claims were alleged and that she can't technically say it's fact.
I have to say allegedly for Shannon to protect myself legally. Please note that all of what is discussed within this video should only be interpreted as speculation.
And you know the ironic thing is, Shannon, like from what I could tell, Shannon doesn't say the same in her video. Instead, she repeatedly makes claims as if they're facts.
This video is being made for posterity to show I didn't do what I was accused of, and to show that what Emily has accused me and my husband of not only never happened to her, but could not have happened.
This cannot be possible.
That cannot be true. We know that can't be true. Which again, could not have happened. Meaning she was never actually homeless. Either way, she lied about the IP address. Even though the entirety of this story is false, her entire story, meaning it is a lie.
She doesn't preface that these statements are merely her opinion, and what's worse, the claims that she emphatically states as fact are often about Emily being allegedly R-worded.
That means Anthony could not have snuck in through her bedroom window in her father's home to assault her while she was high on heroin the way she stated, seeing as she was never high in that house and didn't move back until she was 6 months into her sobriety. Her statement about how Anthony took advantage of her is a lie.
Here, creep show, creep. Can I call you creep? Here, come here, creep. Here is a single statement of fact. When it comes to Emily's story about being R-worded, you were not there, and it's none of your fucking business. Like, allegedly. Ayo! I think with Shannon's last video, Emily is the one who has more of an actual case to make for defamation. Even then, it's still unlikely, but when you compare the two against the law, Emily is in a better position to take legal action. Allegedly. Okay, I'm done.
It might just mean that my lawyer was like, you know, I like money, but not that much. And maybe Shannon's lawyer's like, I really like money. Let's waste a lot of time in court for money. That might also mean that.
Listen, I'm about to give Emily an honorary doctorate at Penn University. Okay, it just class dismissed.
His handle online is Anthony Parker, and he me and he emotionally abused me and manipulated me when I was most vulnerable.
We have to talk about Anthony. Now, obviously this is a sensitive subject given the accusations of SA, and I had absolutely no interest in asking Emily to relive those details. If you're interested in that part of her story, I recommend you watch her just released response video.
This man, by his own admission, was sober and sound of mind, and he chose to have sex with me while I was intoxicated and not in the right frame of mind.
But I had some questions for Emily in regards to his involvement in the stalking, his silence, and forgiveness. Would you mind real quick if I shift for a moment to Anthony and the allegations against him.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Is that okay? Okay. And just stop me at any point if you need to. So Creepshow's 2.5-hour diatribe digs extensively into Emily's past, including her childhood, which is the reason why many people believe Creepshow's video not only didn't clear her name, but did the opposite and only further provided evidence, if you will, that she was actually Emily's stalker. Like, why would you have that much information on a 9-year-old Emily unless, you know, a stalking be a happening, you know? But even in his silence, we have to remember that there's more players of this devious game than just Shannon alone. I'm talking, of course, about Anthony, Emily's ex, and the man she accused of R-wording her when she was high on H years ago. And even though Anthony's no longer in the public eye, there's still a sense that he's potentially a major player hiding in the shadows, as it were. Do you think that any of the script that Shannon wrote, the 91-page document, do you think that she wrote it entirely? Do you think Anthony had a part in writing it?
I think it was mostly her and Anthony. So much of it was just so wrong. She misses huge gaps or like confuses one story with another person. She says a few times like, oh, we have interviews from these people, but doesn't give any evidence, doesn't post any proof.
Emily also stated that she sent Anthony's step-grandmother a Facebook message, allegedly saying that she believed Anthony was harassing her at one point. We reached out to confirm this, and Anthony's step-grandmother says no such message was ever received.
It's so much filling in the blank. It's so much drawing conclusions out of thin air or taking things out of context on purpose. Not only that, but I reached out to some of these people that she kind of implies that she may have interviewed, and they're like, she never, who, what? Like, they were just confused.
Oh, interesting.
One of the most egregious examples is she does a lot of, Emily claimed this in her original video without posting a clip of me actually claiming that.
Right.
Says that I had accused my ex-partner, someone who I'm actually close with still, of sex trafficking me.
In July, she started dating someone who appeared on her Instagram in a photo with her dogs. We will call this man Bob for the majority of this video. If her story about being forced into camming is true, this would be the man who did it.
Which is not at all what I had said. I had said that I was forced to do camming by dominating men, one specific dominating man. That's all I said. But she wrote up this timeline that, well, because I was with my ex-partner at the time, she must be accusing Bob.
Meaning the only ex-boyfriend who could have forced her into it is Bob, while they were living together with his mother in a 1-bedroom apartment.
And that is just the most egregious, like, I don't even know how, it's just drawing a wild conclusion out of nowhere. And then showing his face and showing his place of work. And then she posts a picture of him holding my oldest son is a newborn, feeding him.
However, seeing as she herself sees him and his mother as her children's surrogate uncle and grandmother, this is doubtful that this actually happened.
So that leaves the implication that I was either lying or that look at how awful a mother she is. She's letting the sex trafficker feed her baby when I made no such claim. And that happens multiple times throughout.
So Shannon claims Bob must have been the man Emily alluded to forcing her to do camming, which Emily and Bob have confirmed is not true. But you know, let's pretend, just for teaching purposes here, that Bob was the man forcing Emily to do camming. Okay, so Petty University, roll the intro. By Shannon's logic, she says that since there's a photo of Bob holding Emily's newborn, and since Emily is smiling in a photo with Bob and his mother, Bob could not have abused Emily.
However, seeing as she herself sees him and his mother as her children's surrogate uncle and grandmother, this is doubtful that this actually happened.
Stop it. Get some help.
Oh my gosh, Becky, wouldn't it be weird if there was like this thing where like abuse victims continue to like stay in relationships with their abuser because they're like afraid or don't know how to get out? That would never happen. That's too weird, right, Becky? Becky, where are you? Rebecca?
Stop it.
gee, you know, it's almost like there should be some kind of term for this psychological phenomenon where like an abuse victim might still be with her abuser. I don't know what that term could be though. I'm thinking cake, like cake batter, woman. Oh wait, battered woman syndrome. It does exist. Battered woman syndrome or battered person syndrome is a psychological condition that can develop when a person experiences abuse, usually at the hands of an intimate partner. People who find themselves in an abusive relationship often do not feel safe or happy. However, they may feel unable to leave for many reasons. You mean to tell me that a photo where people are smiling might not represent what's going on behind closed doors? No.
None of my business. It's none of my business.
As someone who has past claims of being a victim advocate, Shannon, there seems to be a shit ton of victim blaming, shaming, invalidating, and misogyny. But you know, that ain't none of my business. Ain't none of my business. Ain't none of my business.
Some other things that were troubling about Shannon's video is that she decided to simply fill in the blanks of my life.
Now, at one point in Emily's videos about Creepshow, she talks about Anthony, who Creepshow is now believed to be married to, and Emily thinks that Anthony, who she also called Andrew in her video, was the one who possibly started the stalking, and he brought Shannon into it, whether willingly or through Shannon also being a potential victim, and I wanted to dig into this more.
Like, I really think Andrew just roped Shannon into this mean girl obsession with me, and Shannon kind of became the mastermind over time.
Do you still think that it started with Anthony first? Do you still feel that way?
I think it might have been something that they may have done it together. There may be no brainchild, or maybe Anthony wanted to taunt me. Shannon wanted to know where I lived and called my dad, you know, like that. And again, I'm no way to tell. I'm not in their relationship. I feel from what Shannon's sibling from what Loki has told me, it feels like Shannon has a tendency to get obsessed and to latch. And I feel like Anthony spun that and used that.
Now, whereas Andrew was more kind of threatening and domineering, Shannon was more catty and mean girl.
They're two different types of like styles of harassment, but they're all in the same vein of like very targeted, using specific things against me.
Right.
So I just think it's a wicked combination.
And then we came to perhaps one of the most troubling, almost alarming parts of this story. So throughout all this unfolding publicly online and the massive imprint that it has left on so many, I mean like literally millions of people have tuned in and are following this, one person has remained totally silent. And that's Anthony, the man who may have started all of this and who Emily claims allegedly R-worded her. How do you feel about Anthony's silence through all of this? People haven't heard from him. He hasn't come out and made any kind of statements or anything like that. How do you feel about that?
I think his silence speaks volumes. And I think we're better off not hearing from him. It just shows the world exactly, you know, everything they need to see. It says all it needs to say. He doesn't need to say more.
It says all that it needs to say. Whew, honey, okay, listen, like I know I'm supposed to be like all serious or whatever, but like, can a bitch just take a quick second and appreciate that mic drop moment? Just gotta say, Emily, like I felt that. As someone who has been through, not your situation, but similar things, I felt that in my core. I really did. Now, Emily then digs into what she thinks Shannon's video really was. A hit piece, a heavily scripted character assassination.
Shannon's video was a hit piece.
Right.
It was, look at all the terrible stuff that Emily has done or hasn't done. Isn't she just awful? And not once does she even attempt to say, look, it's not me. I'm so sorry that you're stalked, Emily, but you know, you can't just go accusing random people. This wasn't me. None of that occurred. It was a hit piece. Not that I can say how most people would react, but I think a lot of people, if that were them, they'd panic. They'd say it wasn't me. look to prove that it wasn't them, say, hey, I know you've been stalked. It wasn't me. Their first reaction would not be, let me dig through their entire past and try to assassinate their character.
It almost felt like this video was her attempt at just trying to demolish any remaining privacy that you might have and just expose anything and everything and try to have power over you one last time. Was that how it felt to you?
I think that's what she was trying to do, just trying to throw anything at the screen to get people to take me down with her. But I told my husband this is the greatest birthday gift she could have ever given me, because she has nothing now. She has nothing left. I have been open on my own YouTube channel about my addiction struggles, about being a pick-me girl. I was ready for this. And now that it's out there, it made me throw up when I first, saw it or whatever. And I never watched the whole thing through. I skimmed it and then I went straight to the Google Doc. But it was the greatest gift she could have ever given me, because now there's nothing left for her to hold over my head. There are no recent examples of me being toxic or having, bad behaviors or being negative. She doesn't have anything left.
I just need to have a quick little moment because I'm like literally getting goosebumps, so I'm gonna like break from the seriousness for a second, if you don't mind. But
go ahead. Yeah.
When you said she has nothing left, that was such a powerful statement for you to make. She has no more power over you. I think that will make a lot of people happy. It sounds like you have a freedom.
Yes. This is like, it's come full circle. The chapter, I'm closing the book and it's done.
These stories, really these situations that I was in, have haunted my nightmares.
Now, it wouldn't be a swoop doc if I didn't address Emily's own history of harmful, problematic, offensive posts that she has made in the past. Over the years when Emily was younger, she posted things that were, in my opinion, fat-phobic, ableist, microaggressively racist, and in ways misogynistic. And people can interpret it how they want, but regardless of where my or someone else's support might lie for Emily in regards to the abuse that she's lived through, accountability doesn't take a back seat around here, okay? Like, a bitch still has questions. So I asked her about the post. I know that you have addressed it briefly, but is there anything additional you want to say in regards to that, since she did unearth all of these messages again? And has there been anything that you've learned from that time and those things that you were posting to now?
I've just cautioned people. There are screenshots of things that I said that were toxic. They were problematic. They were fat-phobic. They were just wholly offensive and inappropriate. And from my real accounts, I did say those things. I didn't care. I was so detached from empathy, honestly, from even thinking about the other person on the other side of the screen. Instead of addressing it with myself and having a powwow with myself, I was jealous of other people. I wanted to hurt people the way that I hurt inside. I didn't have that level of empathy. I wasn't able to tap into that level of empathy. I was too caught up in my own, me. And that's kind of where those comments come from.
If I wanted to cancel Emily, as they say I did, I would have just made a video of the screenshots of her taking photos of other women in public, making fun of their bodies, and posting them saying, "That'll do, pig, that'll do." Or, "Fat girls piss me off."
We often see with influencer culture in particular the classic art of deflection when it comes to taking accountability for harmful behavior. Like, y'all know I have done a zillion docs and deep dives on this and even dissected the makings of terrible trash apologies, whether it be evoking a nasal drip, white color palettes to convey innocence, Instagram story apologies that don't get to the root and disappear in 24 hours, sitting on the floor to appear more relatable, or whatever the hell this was.
I've been silent for a very long time. I know that's very rare for me.
Whether it's the "I was in a dark place" defense, that "I'm not that person, it was a different time then" excuse, or just straight up disappearing for a while hoping that everyone will forget. Now, these issues have far-reaching effects on our communities as a whole, and most of the time if an influencer does apologize, it usually comes with like the broad, sweeping cliche statements of like, oh, I took some time away to reflect and I have learned and grown. Look at me in all my majesty, and now I am rising from the ashes.
And now, looking back, that was so stupid, because as I did more research on these topics and self-reflected, I f***ed up.
With literally absolutely no details on what the hell that even means, right? Like, I don't know about you, but looking in the mirror all day does not count as reflecting. Okay, Susan, Steven, okay, y'all hoes keep trying it. I see you. So the question that I have come to in response to these apologies is, well, like, how? Like, how did you learn? What work did you do? How long? Like, what's your plan to make it right? Because taking 2 weeks or a month or a year off doesn't really mean shit if you didn't put in the work. That was the next question that I had for Emily. Was there something that you did over the course of time in learning or educating or understanding how and why those things that you were saying were hurtful and were harmful?
Well, I think what happened was those were things that were all said to me when I was younger, because I was overweight when I was younger. Shannon doubts that while showing pictures of me, at random points in my life. I was overweight for a considerable amount of time. Then I was very thin. And when I was thin, I was using a lot of drugs to obviously help also keep me thin. And it wasn't until I got off drugs and I started doing work in therapy that I was able to, and again, it's still coming from a selfish place, but it was able, I think just in general, humans, we have to see it, feel it for ourselves in order to gain that empathy. It was still me making those comments. I was not a different person. That was me, but my brain was somewhere else. I lacked empathy. But then when I started to do the work and I started working on, with someone with my eating disorder, a lot came to the surface. And one of those things was, these are some things that were told to you in high school that, yeah, you have big boobs, but you're fat, it doesn't count. Things like that.
Emily also references back to her former substance abuse and the effects that can and does have on the brain, which was also a factor in her life during the time of the post, and another thing she had to eventually confront.
I don't know if many people know this, but when you become clean off of things, specifically heroin and sometimes cocaine, it can take your brain sometimes 3 to 5 years to fully heal itself. And as my brain began to heal, I regained that sense of empathy.
Now, Emily talks often about empathy and the lack of it. And just so we have a quick understanding, empathy is central to what it means to be human. It is the rock upon which moral behavior is built and the crux of social organization, helping us navigate the conflicts between our needs and those of others. Through empathy, we are able to feel what another is feeling. And I thought this part was fascinating and not something that I've heard people discuss before, so I did a little bit of research and found some interesting things real quick. Empathy has been found to have a strong biological and neurological basis. It's been linked to the hormones oxytocin and serotonin, the part of the brain that fosters social emotions such as guilt, shame, and embarrassment. When substance use becomes part of the picture, however, it can block these biological and chemical processes, effectively disrupting empathy and even eliminating awareness of others' feelings. I think some people's first reaction when they hear someone say they lacked empathy or the ability to have it, I feel like people will respond like, okay, bitch, then get it back. Turn your empathy on, but it's not always that simple. So here are some reasons as to why addiction in particular can lead to a lack of empathy. As we focus more and more energy on our substance use, we miss basic social and emotional cues from others. We may exhibit less concern for social consequences caused by us or our behaviors related to substance abuse. So the pieces of what Emily is starting to say fall into place. And I'm not trying to put words into her mouth. This is just how I'm kind of interpreting it, that in addition to experiences she may have had when she was younger, her addiction also potentially fueled some of what was behind her posts.
I felt lots of shame around those comments, and I brought them forth in therapy myself because I knew they were wrong. I've scrutinized, I've done a lot to, figure out why was I so mean? And it just comes back to hurt people. And I just didn't care. there was not, there really wasn't that level of empathy there at all.
I appreciate you addressing that. You know, we're seeing so many people be called out for things and they just completely avoid the why and where is it coming from, why is this happening, and how do you learn from it. So I appreciate you opening up about that.
You try to paint me as lying about my addiction, about my homelessness, my own pain, using these small fragments of my past social media posts.
So let's shift a moment now to the blame game. This is the part where Creepshow tries to pin the stalker nail on any random ass donkey and see what sticks. Wait, hold up a second. Isn't a donkey like also called an ass? If I say random ass donkey, is that like saying random ass ass? Yes, these are the things that Swoop thinks about when she's alone. Send help.
On the Sugarfruit channel, Emily ended up doing a couple of controversial things, like posting an anime review naked in a bathtub. The video of her in a bathtub caused a lot of anger in the community because the YouTube anime community is filled with mostly men who saw Emily doing that as a cheap way to get subscribers and attention.
Now, Creepshow does attempt at one point to blame the anime community for harassing Emily years ago over a review Emily did in a bathtub. And while Emily was trolled a bit, like, Creepshow tries to assert that the anime community must or could have been the one stalking Emily all these years and years later. Yeah, I know. Not even The Incredibles' mom could make that reach, bitch. Okay. Do you think that there is any chance some of the harassment came from these other communities or trolls?
That was another example of Shannon kind of twisting my words. She said that I had never received harassment ever until I started working with Anthony, and that's just not what I said. I made it clear that I was posting on various social media accounts and that, you know, I had received milefords of trolling and harassment. These threatening, look what I have over you, look what I have, those were different. Because in the anime community, you know, the worst hate that I received was, you know, people calling me a slut. This targeted harassment was different. The instances of stalking that I'm talking about, I don't think they came from that community at all.
Okay, now we get into the lolcow posts, the anonymous forum that Creepshow was outed by the site's admin as having posted hundreds of nasty, hateful comments about other YouTubers, her own friends, and even herself. And it was like the whole community was just asking and almost demanding that Creepshow address these posts. And in her 2.5-hour response manifesto, here is what Shannon finally said about lolcow. Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say? What was that? You don't say.
Confuse them with your silence.
No, really, like she didn't say a damn thing. You're not inside her head, obviously, but I just wonder if you've had any thoughts as to why she was posting on lolcow.
I think there's a hateful seed in Shannon. I think there's a lot of anger, a lot of jealousy, that she hasn't dealt with, because I see a lot of this. I hate to say this, but I see a lot of how I was in her. I almost feel Shannon, I believe, created that channel as a way to kind of troll on me. Just all these coincidences, you know, creating the same type of videos with the exact same names, and then Shannon experienced a lot of success, more even success than I'd ever experienced.
One thing that I saw consistently in my interview with Emily was the amount of empathy that she extended towards Shannon, even through the anger she felt, and that actually surprised me.
When I first suspected Andrew, I actually worried about you. Part of me wanted to reach out to make sure you were okay, but I wasn't sure what was real or what wasn't.
I wish she would have done right by the people watching her and gotten help and realized that there was an angry seed or whatever internal issues there may be. I think instead it fostered the seed and it nurtured it and it made it grow. I know people are angry at her and I'm angry at her, but I think people also need to realize there's got to be a lot of hurt in a person to not just do the things she did to me, but do the things she did to her friends behind their backs and do it so consistently for so long. And that's only one website. We don't know where else, this could have been coming from.
Right.
I want to live in peace. I can take the hate, but I can't take the fear of losing my job and not being able to support my kids or losing my kids.
There was another part in Emily's first video where she shared DMs with Creepshow, where she asked if she was the one stalking her, and if so, could she send her a restraining order?
The restraining order will prevent Andrew, and you by association of IP, from contacting me.
This conversation is now known as the infamous blurred DMs, but I thought it was fascinating. You were sharing this conversation that you were having with her, where you were saying, like, look, I think this is you. Is this you? In regards to the stalking. People to say, I think it's you. Is it you? Can I serve you with a restraining order?
I said, look, if I'm wrong, please forgive me. I know I seem crazy, but it's been 8 years of harassment.
I'm curious about what your thought process was in that time when you were asking her these things.
I'd gone in and out of feeling safe, feeling unsafe. Are they done stalking me? Are they still stalking me? I mean, I expressed it. If you read the DMs, I'm like, I don't feel safe. I feel frightened. I've gone to all these measures to protect myself and my family. And it kind of just tipped me over the edge. I don't think I was like thinking. I think at that point it was more just an impulse thing that I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to explode. And I know we can't really say how someone would respond, but I think Spoctor theory pointed it out. You'd be upset. You'd be upset if someone was accusing you, and Shannon was almost not. The entire conversation felt like she was just trying to pacify me.
I gave her my illegal information and told her exactly how to reach Anthony and I, and she hid those messages in her video to make it appear as if I was doing the opposite.
Also in the DMs about the restraining order, Shannon mentioned details about experiencing homelessness and asked Emily to keep this information private, to which Emily says,
and I said, no, I won't tell a soul, I promise. Then Shannon said, you're the only one who knows other than Annie.
And Emily makes good on that promise. She blurs out the information, but what does Shannon do? She creates the narrative that Emily blurred out these sections to intentionally make it look like Shannon was hiding something, even though Shannon asked Emily to keep that information private.
She also knew I was homeless at the time because I told her as much in our direct messages that same day. She chose to blur these images out for some reason, as if they were incredibly sensitive and private, despite them being years out of date.
I mean, Creepshow literally states in her messages to Emily, and I quote, "We are still homeless. Please don't tell anyone."
And then I also blurred out two other things that when she shows the unblurred receipts, I ask her, she asks me, please don't tell anyone, it's my private business. That's the kind of thinking that's backwards to me.
Why she chose to blur them makes no sense.
No, actually, making a big deal about someone keeping private the things you ask them to keep private is what makes no sense. So it was almost like, if anything, all she has exposed here is that you kept your promise.
Yeah.
Which then it was just like, okay, well, Emily keeps promises, like, good to note.
Why would I want to expose things that are private and hurtful? Like, the thing that she shared with me is a difficult thing for a lot of people to go through. Like, my brain doesn't work that way. I think most people's brain doesn't work that way. It's unrelated. It wasn't necessary.
My first stint of sobriety started in September 2012, but over the course of the next few years afterwards, I would be an on and off user.
She was not addicted to cocaine at 14, like she said, and she never abused drugs until after Anthony and her dated and broke up.
Now, perhaps one of the most prominent and alarming themes of Creepshow's video was all of the instances where she dissected Emily's former drug addiction, and it was like all the chess pieces were being used simultaneously to attack and deny every claim that Emily ever made. Do you mind if I talk a little bit about the drug addiction?
No, go right on ahead.
Okay. We've seen her bring up your past history of drug addiction. I just wonder, does it feel like she's weaponizing that against you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How does that feel?
It feels insanely hurtful and just also backwards and confusing, because in the letter that was sent to me at the end, there's like this thing about like, well, Anthony's sober and he has a zero tolerance policy. So that leads me to believe that, Shannon is probably, at some point has been an advocate for bringing awareness to addiction and addiction health if she's with someone who's like that. It's backwards.
Emily was not abusing drugs as she stated, and this is known because Anthony himself has a history of past drug abuse before he met Emily and has a zero tolerance policy for that in his life.
So here's the conflict, right? With Anthony, a former addict, Shannon gives him 100% total credibility with anything that he says in regards to his sobriety date and who he hung around, and, you know, denying that he R-worded Emily. That Anthony should just be firmly believed without question, but Emily, also a former addict, gets no credibility and should not be believed when it comes to her sobriety and surviving Anthony, but then should also be believed on everything else. Like, it just...
Because how can you weaponize something and use it against someone and saying, look at how much of an unreliable narrator this person is, while also using it as a way to be like, well, see, they posted this, so this must be fact. Obviously, there's nuance to that question. It can't be, is this person always reliable or are they unreliable? But when you are posing a question like this or trying to prove that something never happened, you can't use that same evidence and make it both ways.
It's essentially a trap, right? A chess maneuver, looking ahead and cornering Emily no matter how she responds. And what's worse, by using Emily's past history with substance abuse, she's simultaneously stigmatizing the disease of addiction, erasing the story of an R-word survivor, while further perpetuating the bullshit phenomenon of people not believing survivors by default, which is why so many don't come forward and so many abusers just remain free.
So it's awful that she's using it against me. It was such a tremendously difficult time in my life. She throws out things as if they are fact. She has no clue what a family, what a person goes through in active addiction, that she just glazes right over as if it's so suspicious and so weird. It just shows to me more and more that she knows very little about things like drug addiction and sex trafficking and how these things really happen.
Y'all, just let me make it clear. Weaponizing someone else's struggle with addiction and their journey of recovery is disgusting. We're talking about a very real disease, and though it can be hard on those suffering as well as those close to them, no one has the right to use it against you as a means of invalidating you as a person or the things you have survived, particularly if you've been abused. I just wondered if you have any words for people who are actively struggling.
Addiction isn't linear. It's not one day you march into rehab and you get sober and then everything's fine for the rest of your life. And I feel like people on the outside always paint it that way, that why aren't you said you were sober, why aren't you sober yet? There is no one single right path for anyone. Sobriety is great, but that's not technically the end all be all goal. You can be sober and not be taking any illicit substances, but still have an addict lifestyle and still do things that hurt you and harm you. The goal is balance and finding a place where you can be settled without always trying to fill a void. I've been sober for years now, and there are days when I think about it, and there are days when I feel weak. But because I've found balance, I have other avenues to lean on, and that to me is the ultimate goal. And it's okay if it takes you time to find that balance.
I think that's an incredibly important statement, and I just want to say that I'm sorry that you have gone through that, and thank you for letting me ask you about that. Another thing that Creepshow focused heavily on in her video was about Emily's words and actions as a child. So she showed countless posts that Emily made when she was in middle school, high school, and beyond, in essence putting a child on trial, so to speak. Throughout the 2.5-hour video, she dug up a lot of screenshots of things that you were saying when, you were basically a child. You were, 7th grade, 8th grade, 13 years old. She had said this: Emily has an extremely long long pattern of obsessive behavior over people she is romantically attracted to, and a very long pattern of calling people who she has been attracted to abusive after the fact. Now, first of all, it's clear that you were a literal child for most of these posts, and I think hopefully most people understand that a child's brain is not fully developed, and I think that happens around age 25. Do you feel like you were dealing with, as a child, any mental health challenges?
Yes, absolutely. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder with obsessive compulsive tendencies when I was 9 or 10, somewhere in there.
Now, just to add some clarity for those who might not know what bipolar disorder is, here is a brief definition. Bipolar disorder, formerly called manic depression, is a mental health condition that causes extreme mood swings that include emotional highs, mania or hypomania, and lows or depression.
My parents took me in to see this doctor who I believe did me so wrong. And immediately, we were there all the time. I went through so many different evaluations, and I was immediately diagnosed with this. Initially, within 2 or 3 weeks, I was on tons of different medications. I was immediately put on Abilify, as well as lithium, and then I believe it was like trazodone or some sort of sleeping aid. Abilify, as I've come to learn as I've gotten older, has seen many class action lawsuits. The FDA even put out a warning saying that Abilify can cause gambling addiction, sex addiction, obsessive compulsive tendencies. My parents were freaked out.
As of the start of 2019, there were in excess of 2,100 lawsuits filed in federal court against the manufacturers of Abilify, where the makers have been accused of negligently designing Abilify and hiding evidence that the drug increases the risk of addictive behavior. Patients can't stop performing these actions even though they desperately want to stop, and the actions are causing harm. And that's some scary shit. Like, it's very real, and as one could imagine, a 9-year-old child could be at even greater risk to those side effects.
You know, my brain was chaos. It was very difficult. Again, hormonal child brain already chaos. I truly believe that Abilify and being given Abilify, I think it just kind of messed me up a lot. And I'm not saying that people who are on Abilify now think bad. I'm not saying that. But for me, it completely screwed me up. When I got the psych meds that I really needed and the help that I really needed, my life almost immediately just went right on track. And Shannon even shows screenshots, like, look at all these random diagnoses she gets and then kind of twist things. And Emily said she had, borderline personality disorder. I never said that. I used to abbreviate bipolar as BPD. There's a common mistake. It happens all the time.
She stated in her now deleted video about how she dated a sociopath that she was misdiagnosed as bipolar when she was 9. On Facebook in 2009, before dating Anthony, she spoke about how she had been prescribed lithium at a certain point.
Y'all, I'm sorry, we gotta do it, okay? Class is in session. Shannon, listen, Shannon, bring it in real quick. You know what, actually, no, this applies to anyone weaponizing a child's mental health against them. So bring it in, just a little, okay, that's close enough. I don't know if you've heard the latest gossip about Emily's mental health, but I've got the piping hot tea, bitch. It's steaming. Are you ready? It's none of your business.
None of my business. It's none of my business.
Shannon highlighted all of the obsessiveness, but she never highlighted he asked me to stop, so I stopped. She never highlighted okay, well, I can't do, fine, then if he doesn't want me, then I guess I'll move on. And not only that, but just because I was hurt and I'm saying this person hurt me, I hate this person, I'm mad at this person, they broke my heart, that does not equal a formal accusation of abuse. That's another thing that was just really misrepresented.
When you see some of the posts that you were making when you were a child, looking back on it now, do you feel like any of it was maybe a cry for help of any sort?
Absolutely. I think It was the, early 2000s. Mental health still there's so much, stigmatized about it at that time. And like you said, it is a journey. So it can be a horrible, hard journey for some people. I did not have the right support on my journey. My parents loved me. They wanted to do whatever they could to help me. They just didn't know how. But I was screaming for help. I was my mind was chaos all the time. And I didn't know how to make it quiet. And I latched on to older men. I latched on to an older woman. I latched on to people that I felt safe and stable around, and I clung to them. And even though I loved my parents and respected them, I clung to people who made me feel good and used them like a drug, like to fill the void, to quiet my head.
I just gotta take another moment. I don't know if you understand the full extent of how powerful your words are right now. If no one has told you, I will be DMing you every 3 to 5 business days. Okay, I'll be messaging you and being like, you're dope, you're awesome, thank you for sharing. And I don't know if I can, this sounds weird. I'm gonna say I'm proud of you, and that's a weird thing to say.
No, okay.
I just think it's wonderful that you have arrived at the place that you are in your current journey here. And I just want to make sure that you understand that there is a strength that a lot of people are going to look up to you in that regard. I know that you have shared about multiple instances of abuse with a few people. As someone who has survived so much, has that affected how you approach people now in life?
Yes. I am very wary of meeting new people. I'm very wary of who I let into my life. I'm very wary about any information I give about my life now, my existence now, where I am, my family. When you're using drugs, you're vulnerable. What Shannon, I think, fails to realize is vulnerable people attract people who like to take advantage of vulnerability. And half of her list of all the people that I accused of abuse, I didn't even accuse of abuse.
This is another video in which she accuses a past ex of abusing her, making this the 8th person she has accused of abuse in videos that I have cited.
I gotta take a quick second, because Shannon had posted this long list of names claiming that Emily accused them all of abuse, and Emily addressed this in her response video with just the perfect touch of pettiness.
This does not equal a formal accusation of abuse. So Shannon, let me fix your little infographic really quickly. There, that's better.
Emily, I'm telling you, like, honorary doctorate at Petty University, okay? I will mail you a diploma, okay? Just... Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. I couldn't resist, but back to it.
She doesn't realize, such a large chunk of my life, I was with someone who wasn't good for me, whether they emotionally abused me, physically, sexually. There's a spectrum of abuse.
Emily said something incredibly important here, and I want to take a moment to underscore it, what she calls the spectrum of abuse. Now, there's this idea that abuse can only look a couple of ways, meaning physical or emotional, and within those two categories, people often think that physical abuse is only abuse if it reaches a certain level of violence, and emotional has to be particularly aggressive, very gaslighting. But there's so much more to it. In a broad sense, there are upwards of 10 types of abuse, and this list is not the final say by any means, but here are some of those types. Physical abuse, DV, SA, psychological or emotional, financial or material, modern slavery, discriminatory, organizational or institutional, neglect, and self-neglect. And within these categories, stories, there are a myriad of types of behavior that can be considered abuse that a victim might not actually realize. And again, this list is not exhaustive. If you believe that you are being harmed, but it's not on the list, just trust your gut and please talk to somebody. But here are some physical examples: assault, hitting, slapping, punching, kicking, hair pulling, biting, pushing, rough handling, scalding and burning, inappropriate or use of restraint, making someone purposefully uncomfortable, like opening a window and removing blankets. I mean, the list literally just goes on and on. And some examples of psychological or emotional abuse can be enforced social isolation, preventing someone accessing services, educational and social opportunities, and seeing friends, failure to respect privacy, use of threats, humiliation, bullying. Like, if you think that's bad, then like, whew, just strap in, honey, because it gets worse. According to studies done, in almost 20% of all marriages and intimate partnerships, couples slap, shove, hit, or otherwise assault each other. Emotional abuse, verbal threats, humiliating or degrading remarks, and controlling behavior is even more common. And that's only accounting for the abuse that is reported, and it's far more likely to go unreported, often due to fear, but also for the simple fact that many people might not equate what they've been living through as abuse because they don't think it's violent enough to count.
That's why it flies under the radar so much, because people think, oh, well, he just makes me feel like crap every day of my life, but he didn't hit me. I'm not really abused. Or he threw this at me, but it didn't hit me, so I'm not There's a spectrum of abuse. And when you are vulnerable, when you are using drugs, people who love that power, who want to hold something over you, who want to feel powerful and strong, and they have no other place to get it, that's how they get it. They prey on people who are vulnerable. They prey on the people who are going to say yes or be too afraid to say no. And I was that person.
These stories, really these situations that I was in, have haunted my nightmares. I felt guilt, pain, shame, embarrassment, and intense anxiety over them. I felt like I was keeping a secret, like I needed to be shamed for what had happened to me.
I was afraid. I am the, going to Starbucks, ordering my drink, and I misspeak and I say sorry 5 times. I'm learning not to be that person anymore, but I am still absolute, I say sorry all the time, and I always go, why? You didn't even, you're in the supermarket and you walk around someone where there's plenty of space and you go, sorry, like I'm still that person. I'm that, keep my head down, I apologize, and I'm trying not to be that person. I'm taking steps to not be that person anymore. But that's just how it's changed me. There are aspects of me that I think seem strong, but there's so much of me that still feels small and scared and guarded.
Okay, let me just make one thing clear and then I will move on. Abuse is abuse. No matter how it happens, no matter how severe you might think it is or isn't, it doesn't matter. If someone is harming you physically, mentally, or otherwise as a means of controlling you or intimidating you, holding power over you, or forcing you to do something that doesn't feel right, it is abuse, and it's not your fault. You do not have to have bruises or a mental breakdown or depression or fear for what you've endured to be valid. And sometimes it takes us years to process, if you ever even do, and that's okay. Now, most of you know a bit of my story and I won't dwell on it, but I have survived multiple assaults, physically, and emotionally, and some were incredibly violent and some of it was psychological narcissistic abuse, like the real kind, not the shit that people are just throwing around every 3 to 5 business days as like this new trendy word, everything is narcissistic abuse. No, we should go easy on how often we say that. And it took me years to get to this place where I can even process and say out loud that it happened. There's no timeline on this, and there is no shame in what you've gone through, and I want you to remember, burn it in your brain if you have to, that I believe you. Period. And I hope that one day in your own time, because that is all that matters, that you reach out to someone that you trust or a support resource and tell your story, because it doesn't have to be your burden to carry. And if you've survived abuse multiple times or from multiple people, and the creep shows of the world try to make you think that you couldn't possibly have been abused more than once, or you must be exaggerating, you know what, just let SWOOP know, okay? Because I'm in the mood to punch some balls, okay? I said what I said. I got your back.
I want to be done with you. I've come forward. I've said what I need to say. That's all that matters to me now.
So after digging into all of this, after all the research, the videos, the tweets, like all of it, there was one thing that I really wanted to know. What do you think has been the most shocking realization to you through this whole thing?
This last video shocked me because I just don't know how that video was just so angry, and there was not a shred, not a modicum of human empathy or sympathy in that at all. That shocked me, because I think in order to have had the relationship she had, she would have to have these emotions. But in that video, there was not a shred of it, when I was expecting there to at least be something, even if it was just to save her own ass. Of course, I'm hurt that Shannon stalked me and harassed me and sided with Anthony, my, abuser. I'm angry at her. I'm frustrated with her, but I have this empathy for her. I realize that I'm sure in a way she is absolutely a victim as well, of being manipulated, of being, we have people who've come forward who know them, who've said, I tried to tell her he's abusive. I still feel, part of me feels sad for her. I'm angry at her, but I'm sad for her. And I realize, as do many people, that she is in a way a victim. But all I heard was just so much anger and bitterness and hatred. The way she went after Tipster.
Tipster said that if I was able to prove that I didn't do what I was being accused of, that he would apologize to me. And to that I say, F you disgusting person.
Tipster and I have gotten along and then not gotten along and then gotten along. I think Tipster's a good person. I think he's a good person. And I think he's caught a lot of unnecessary flack on from Shannon and then from people who support me. I mean, she just went off on him and was so mean, and I don't know. I don't think any part of me was holding out a hope for like an apology or anything, because that could implicate her. I think I was holding out hope that not for an apology, but just some shred of kindness and understanding, something.
To be honest, like even your answer there, I think is probably going to surprise some people. There's a level of empathy in the way you're even responding to that question. That's been one of the overriding takeaways I've had after doing all this research, that time and again, through everything that Emily has been through, allegedly and otherwise, she still reserves some empathy for Shannon, which I think is commendable. I'm sure there are many people online who don't think Shannon deserves that, but at the end of the day, that's up to Emily. Which takes us to perhaps the most important and most difficult question that I had for Emily, and that is about forgiveness. With everything that you've been through, all of the allegations, do you see forgiveness happening at any point?
I think I've already forgiven her, even before. I will never have, not even for Anthony is nothing. No forgiveness. He gets nothing. Nothing. I realize that Shannon is a victim in some way. I'll never forget this, but I can't hold on to hatred and anger and frustration, and I just don't have it in me. I don't know if that's just because, I'm not capable of it, or because I'm just exhausted. I just don't want to waste any more time being angry and being hurt when there's so much in my life that I need to be grateful for, and put that energy to being grateful for. I've already forgiven her.
Do you think that as far as online goes with Shannon, do you think there is the possibility of redemption for her?
She could try. I don't think in the next 10 years that that's going to happen. Do I think it's impossible? No. One of the arguments in the letter, the cease and desist, was, the long-term memory of the internet. It's not that long-term. Do I think anytime recently she could come back like nothing had happened and start up her career and have as much success? No. Do I think she still has supporters? Yes. Do I think she could do that and then hope to God that eventually, the algorithm will shuffle around enough that they'll hit people who have no idea what happened? Yes. Let's just say I don't think redemption is unheard of, never going to happen. I just think the internet needs time to heal. This part of the internet, because it's a gaping wound right now.
Emily says it all right there. Like, whether it be forgiveness or redemption, I think perhaps the most surprising yet consistent element of this whole story is Emily. Not just in her willingness to tell her story and take accountability for her own problematic past behavior, but to be open to the idea of forgiveness and moving on. With that, putting all of them aside, what is next for you? Like, where do you go from here?
I just want to go back to, posting, going to Target and buying the cheapest art supplies that I could find to show people what the best art supplies are that are cheap. And I'm working on a children's book that I have held so near and dear to my heart. And I feel like the manuscript's getting close. I just want to go back to doing that, selling my artwork, being with my kids, my beautiful, beautiful babies. My husband, my mom, my dad, they deserve to have the best version of me that I can put out, because they've been everything for me. And I'm so grateful to have them. I wouldn't be in the place that I am right now without them. And they deserve the best version of me that I can give them. And that's just honestly the best version of me, is making stupid YouTube videos and being the goofy mom on the block, and because Lord knows I am, and being there for my viewers who've also been everything to me. So that's why I have to release the hurt and the anger, because I can't be the best version of myself with that inside.
I think, again, as an outsider, your hope that you're giving your family the best of you, I think that you are achieving that. I hope that they are incredibly proud of you. I'm sure that they are, and I hope that you have the support that you need. And I think coming forward like this with your story is something that, if ever your children see it, I think that they will be incredibly proud of your strength and your vulnerability. I'm excited to see the children's book whenever that comes to fruition. Continue to trust your instincts and trust your heart, and I hope that you are able to find some healing through this.
Thank you so much.
You're a cool human. You're doing a good job.
The next time I go to say sorry for walking around someone not even touching them in the grocery store, I'm going to go, hold on, wait.
Wait a second.
You don't need to say sorry.
Child. Okay, I didn't know if I was gonna do this, but I think we could all use a kitty palate cleanser. And Mr. Pork Chop, you wanna say hi, Pork Chop? Say hi. He just woke up for a nap. He might be a little grubby right now. Okay, y'all, I got a couple of things to say, and then I will get to the closing with my final thoughts. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Emily for sitting down with me. Like, I know this hasn't been easy, to say the least, and I really appreciate your openness and vulnerability. Okay, you want to go play? Okay, honey. You can go play. If y'all haven't seen part 1 and part 2 of this series, I will have that linked below, as well as Emily's final video on the topic. And secondly, once again, a huge thank you to everyone who has got their official Petty University apparel. I don't think y'all understand like the joy that it gives me when I see your posts on Instagram and Twitter, so please just keep sharing so I can repost you. Cause listen, honey, okay, those who petty together stay ready together. Couple of Twitter shout outs from my part 2 doc. First shout out goes to Sabs N, who says, "This is one of the most in-depth, funniest, and true videos on the Creepshow situation. I did feel something anxious being in a similar situation, but I appreciate Swoop's love, advice, and her humor. Are you having a bath in my arms? It's very cute." Thank you so much. I do hope that you find healing in your situation. And second shout out goes to Lionhearted, who says, "Please, Professor Petty, kick my shit in." I don't really know what that means, but I like it. No, I'm so stoked that y'all are loving the docs and the true crime ones. If you're happy, I'm happy. That's how we do around here. If you want to be my next Twitter shout out, just make sure to follow me on Twitter, linked below, and retweet this video right here. Also hit me up on Instagram. That's where I will be spilling all the tea, child. Be sure to check my link in the description and download Fetch Rewards for free and use code SWOOP to get 3,000 rewards points instantly when you scan your first receipt. You will love it, honey. I think the situation ultimately comes down to power, control, and pain. For years, Emily was being stalked and harassed, and the motivating factor behind that is usually somebody's attempt to have power and control over another person. But now, as Emily said in the interview, there's nothing left. They have nothing left. Every problematic, sensitive area of Emily's past is now out there for the world to see, and there's nothing left. And that is where I think Emily truly finds her power. And the other side of that, of course, is pain. The pain that this has caused Emily with what she has endured, but also, unpopular opinion, the pain that Shannon might potentially be living as well. Like, I can't personally look at the things that Shannon allegedly said about herself on LOLcow and not feel like there's probably some pain manifesting there as self-harm. As Emily herself said, hurt people hurt people. It's a terrible thing. And so that's where the question of forgiveness comes into play. You know, Emily doesn't have to forgive anyone ever. It's totally within her right and would be very understandable. But she did. And I think that speaks volumes. I know for me personally, that single statement from Emily caused me to reflect on the pain and resentment I've had for the people who have abused me, and I hope that one day I can come to a place of forgiveness as well. You know, as challenging and important as these topics are, and I know we have some jokes here and there to lighten the mood, but at the end of the day, I hope that Emily and Shannon can find some closure within themselves, because that's the only place that closure can really happen. We can't expect that of other people. And I hope that Emily can release the pain and the anger and the fear that she once carried and can finally find her healing that she so very much deserves. And I hope that for Shannon as well. I hope that Shannon finds her own peace and healing, especially if she has endured abuse as well, because no one deserves that. It's important to remember that we're all human. This whole thing is fragile, and sometimes humans do really shitty, unimaginable things to others, but that doesn't have to be the end of the story, and I certainly hope that's not the end of Emily's story here. I think she has a very bright future ahead of her, and I look forward to seeing it. And perhaps when we learn to take accountability and face our own internal demons and put the game pieces away, we can all find a way to move forward and find positive change. But you know what? Y'all got this. Class dismissed. Swoop!